what you've been working for? I just want to say that I knew Lee peripherally for several years before I knew his background. And even once I knew his background, which was impressive, when I finally heard more about it the night before last at open mic, I was really impressed and delighted to be able to invite him onto the stage right now. So if you just walk the other direction. Oh, that's a good question. That's a complicated answer that I don't want to take the time to talk about right now because I'd rather be hearing this guy than me. But we'll be in touch when we talk about that.
So, every once in a while in our lives, we have knowing. You know. You know when you know. It's an incredible feeling to have knowing. It's not random. It's not happenstance. You know. And it's lovely when you have that around your life, when you know your life is good. You have the knowing of like, fuck, my life is really good right now. I just feel it. I feel like and for me, oddly enough, for me, I had this knowing about my life feeling so good back in Boulder, Colorado, in 1995. There was an incredible diversity of white people in Boulder back then. And I had my little towny bike and I would ride around Boulder. I'd be like, hi, Jim. And I'd just be like, yes, Boulder. I'd just run around Boulder with flowers and shit. I'd be like, hi, I have an apple for you. You know, it was just one of those time periods where I just felt so good. And I was performing on Pearl Street Mall, the walking, pedestrian, outdoor mall, and I had community with all these other street performers, other jugglers, the guy who blew fire out of his ass, regurgitated a bowling ball, walked on a rope, you know, all these guys I had community with, and we'd share this spot on 13th and Pearl. And on 13th and Pearl, there's a little street that goes across. And I'll get back to that in a second, but it was a wonderful time in my life. I had dance community, and I had a lot of gigs. I was working a lot. This was a time where I just was in my zone. I felt like it. And I was off to Vancouver, Canada. Vancouver, Canada, where I had performed in 1986. My first really big gig was at the World's Fair, which was being hosted and called Expo 86 in Vancouver. And I had this great time meeting many international performers from England, street performers, buskers, the British term for street performer. And it was phenomenal, the World's Fair. And here I was back in Canada, a lot of A's in that word. And this was a comedy festival that had indoor and outdoor. And so I'm in front of, besides the indoor shows, I'm in front of the art gallery, the modern art gallery, their version of the Met, you know, in New York. And they have this incredible set of stairs on the backside to one of the main streets downtown, and it's about 2 stories tall. It's very similar to the Metropolitan Museum of Art on Fifth Avenue. And that was where I had first started performing, was in front of the Met, imitating the way people walk, the way I would improvise with all of them. This was before I had started developing something called verbal following. That's where I dub in the thoughts, voices, and sound effects of everything that walks behind me. So if as I get people to get up on the stairs, because the art of street theater is very strange. The art of street theater, especially when you're beginning your show, you're gathering your crowd. You're building the crowd. We call it crowd building. And it takes a long time sometimes to build a crowd in a weird spot. Like at a museum that people aren't used to going, there's comedy over there. Let's go over there to the comedy. And I'd get these people to go up on the steps, and while they were sitting there, I would turn, and with my back to the audience, I would be dubbing in the thoughts and voices of people who were walking behind me with their dog. I would do the thoughts of the dog pissing, whatever it was, I would have a voice or a sound effect for it. The finale of the show, which eventually went to be part of Cirque du Soleil and the show that I was cast in, Saltimbanco, I have a couple of old programs back there. If you're bored later as you're leaving, you can look at my old program and look at the show from 25 years ago. And so the fun thing with gathering crowd and playing with traffic, this was one of the things I got to do in front of the Met, was I would literally go out into the street, or on Pearl Street in Boulder, I would stop cars, and it would take them a second to realize that like they're sitting in their car and they're looking at you as I write them the imaginary ticket, or take out the rope and throw it over, and then latch on to the car, and then slowly start pulling the vehicle, and then they're starting to improvise with me. They're starting to realize, oh shit, there are people on those steps, look at that, he's fucking with me, oh great! And then they slowly inch the car forward a little bit at a time, as I pull the rope, and then we slowly get to the point where I'm walking down the street with them going along, and then I would then, of course, if I'm writing the ticket, I would open the door, get them to stand up, put their hands on the car, spread their legs, pat them down, and then I would get in the car and drive off with it. Really. Especially in Boulder, where the white people would just be like, take my car, that's fantastic. At the point, so I was in the zone. At the end of my show, I get 3 people out from the audience, and I improvise a classic Western gunfight where 2 guys shoot it out for the damsel in distress. And I dub in their voices, and they move their lips, and this is what I did at Cirque du Soleil. The only English that's spoken in any Cirque du Soleil show was mine, because I would actually dub in English when we were in Australia. Otherwise, Cirque du Soleil is all gobbledygook. It's all made-up language. The songs are in these, how many of you have an album from Cirque du Soleil? Anybody? Okay, 1 person. I love Cirque du Soleil. The word Cirque du Soleil translate into, we charge you a lot of money. That's the literal translation. So there I was in front of, I was sweating much more than I am now in front of Vancouver and at the art gallery. And I finally get these 3 people to act out this Western, and then I'm finally done, and I have to say the hat line. The hat line is the technical term for when you ask for the money. The money goes in the hat. It's the hat line. The more money you give, the more money I have. That's a very old one. One of my favorites is, kids, for every $5 you give to the funny man, it really helps. If your parents don't give you any money to give to the funny man, it only means they don't love you. My favorite bit would be when a little kid comes up, puts $1 in the hat. You take the kid and you turn him upside down, and then you shake him to see if there's any money still in the pockets. I would do that, yes. You gotta laugh. Anyway, I'm drenched in sweat. This woman with a cigarette walks up to me in her glasses with her short hair, and she says, I'm from Cirque du Soleil. My name is Carmel Rouet. I just video your show without your permission. Do you have a business card? And I'm like, yes I do. Hold on. Let me get the towel and give you a card. I give her the card and she says, you know, we're doing a new show. We're rebooting Saltimbanco. It's going to be going to Asia. Maybe you would be right. The little gunfight can work because we had a man who used to do the gunfight. Maybe we'll be in touch. Thank you for the information. Off she goes. By the way, you know, almost everything in French sounds sexy. You know that? For example, mon chien est mort dans la voiture. Means my dog is dead in the car, but sounds sexy. So off Carmen went off, and I finished this festival in Vancouver, and I got back to my happy place of knowing in Boulder, Colorado. I was in a relationship with Angela. Angela, beautiful dance friend of mine. It was very wonderful, and then suddenly I got the first offer from Cirque du Soleil. They were like, we want to offer you the money. Lee, we have the money. And the director would like to meet you too. Can we fly you down to Houston? There's a show called Alegria. We'd like to get you to Alegria. You can say hello to Andrew Watson. And so I fly all the way down to Houston to where Alegria is playing. Every show, the tented shows, they tour either North America or they tour Europe. And oddly enough, the show that I ended up getting into called Saltimbanco, I replaced René Bazinet. There's a wall, by the way, in the studio. Le Studio, it's in Montreal, is the big, enormous campus. It's like the Apple campus, except it's Cirque du Soleil, and they do these trainings. They have offices that are indoors that look out windows into the acrobatic training area, but up to 3 or 4 stories inside. It's this, like an atrium for the gymnasts. And so people will be working on their computers, and their window looks into the acrobatic space, and suddenly some Russian will just flip the fuck by the window, and they don't look. They're so into it. They're like, no, we are just working for Cirque, and somebody will flip by 2 stories up. Not kidding. Also Cirque du Soleil. The billionaire owner, Guy, when I came to Cirque, it was Guy and Danielle, the 2 owners. Guy bought Danielle out. But I'm trying to be nice, but Cirque's not an easy company to work for, and the way they reward you is you get a jacket. When you arrive, they give you a leather jacket. They're very Montreal. They're like, Lee, we give you the jacket. You know, it says Cirque du Soleil on the back. And if you last 5 years, they have a special 5-year jacket. And then every once in a while, you meet an executive or someone who's been there for 15 years. The very first time I saw Cirque du Soleil, and there's a 15-year jacket, by the way. I first saw Cirque du Soleil in Vancouver at the World's Fair in '86, and they were not a big behemoth entity that they became. But anyway, there I was back in Boulder, doing my act, and I'm in this contract process. I get to meet Andrew Watson, the guy who's going to be rebooting Saltimbanco, and I'm replacing René Bazinet, who I knew as a mime on the streets of Paris. So here was this guy that did this Western thing as well with his material, and then I was here like being the new guy, learning that he was crazy. I didn't realize René was crazy because he played also the dramatic role. He had invented these 2 roles, one called Le Baron, which you can see in the booklet back there if you want, and he would what he did is he would train the clown. They call you artistes in Cirque du Soleil. We're really slaves, but they call us artistes. Oui, bien sûr, les artistes. The show really must go on in that company. They'll tell you you're expendable. You're very expendable. You're replaceable. Your IP, the costume, the character, le personnage. We own it. If you want to get a photo with your family when they visit the show, well, ask for permission just in case, because we own the costume, we own you, you know. And so it's a very odd company to work for. I didn't realize that was what I was getting into. But finally they made me an offer after I'd met Andrew and talked, and he was a British guy. He was like, he just was so into it. He was a trapeze guy and he became a director. And he was like, you're going to replace René. And I knew René in front of Le Centre Pompidou in Paris, the Bobo, the famous street performing spot in front of where I had cut my teeth and moved on got rid of whiteface. Because I started on the streets of New York as a traditional mime in whiteface. I was a little afraid in the 80s that a junkie might try and snort my face off just because it was white. But, so anyway, it ends up that they make me the offer, and all of my friends in Boulder are like, Lee, you gotta do it. You have to do it. Cirque du Soleil. Do it. You gotta go. It's Boulder. Boulder will be here when you're bored. Come back when you're done. Go to Cirque du Soleil. And so all of my friends are like that. And so I'm like, yes, I'm gonna go. And I pack up my life. I pack up my apartment. And there's a weird thing about when you leave a life you're happy in. When you actually force yourself to change your life and go to something new that you're not sure about, but you are sure that you were really happy in this little community with these people. And I was like, I should have listened to the little small voice, that little voice that we all hear that's like, don't do it. You're packing up all your stuff, you're saying goodbye, you're having that last lovemaking with your woman. The last time, oh baby, I gotta get on a plane and go. So there I was. I went off to. Oh, but before I was going there, in Denver. Denver was having a big busking festival, and I was actually, before I actually left to go, I still had a few months, and so I went to this busking festival with all my friends, and there was Wayne Condo, another mime performer, and he was part of a team, a duo, with his wife, Nanny. So Wayne and Nanny had a great act called the Antibodies, and they were Australian. But I knew them in Paris when I was at. I can't even believe I say this to this day, but when I was at mime school, not technical school. Mime school. Back in the early 80s, there were 4 great mime teachers that were still alive. The grandfather of modern mime, Etienne Decroux, from the movie Les Enfants de Paradis, Children of Paradise, a wonderful black and white classic. There was Jacques Lecoq, and I really hate when my mom says that to a friend or some gathering. She has to always, yes, my son went to Lecoq. Etienne Decroux, Jacques Lecoq. There was Philippe Gaulier. He was the rebel who left. He was a teacher at Lecoq. He started his own studio because he had his own ideas. This is like 1982, 83, 84 in Paris. And there was, of course, Marceau. If you graduated from Marceau, you came out looking like a little bip. You were just a little mime who would just do exactly what he did. You did it. And anyway, there I was. I saw Wayne in Denver at the Busker Festival, and Wayne it's a mile-high city. And he's come from Australia. He's had kids. He has 2 kids now. Him and Danny had these wonderful little boy, 2-year-old boy and a 4-year-old boy. So he has to go and do some shows and make some money away. And these festivals can pay quite well. They pay for your airfare, they put you up, they take care of you. And I had toured with Wayne because I had been on tour with Wayne and Nanny in Australia. We had toured New Zealand, Wellington, Christchurch, Auckland. And I had also toured with them. I had done festivals with them. How many of you remember the movie Muriel's Wedding? Muriel's Wedding, a good movie. The town that Muriel's Wedding takes place in is called Porpoise Spit. It's the name of the town that they called it, but it's actually based on Coffs Harbour. Coffs Harbour is in New South Wales, and back in 1990, 91, they had their very first busking festival. It was like time. It was like, in Back to the Future, we have to send you back to the future. It was like going to Coffs Harbour in 1990, whatever, was like, what year is it here? You really could, it was like, and Australians have such strange words. They have a word for, pissed. Pissed means you're drunk in Australia, and England probably, but you hear people just go, "Oh, I'm pissed!" And you're thinking they're like, "I'm angry!" And then the other one is root. You came over to Australia, and people would be like, "Oh, mate, you're gonna take her home and give her a root." And I'd be like, "Root? Yeah, rooting, mate. You got a root." Root means, root. I would try and put that shit in a sentence together. I'd be like, I'm pissed. Try and translate it or whatever. I'm angry. Let's go cheer. Root for the team. Poofta, another great word. I didn't know what poofta meant. I came over there, they were like, you're a bloody Yank, you're a poofta. And I didn't know poofta meant gay, and I just thought that was something you put on your cereals. Like, can you pass the pooftas? Thank you. Anyway, I did a lot of touring with Wayne and Nanny. They were dear friends. We did this busking festival in Coffs Harbour. It was very magical. Magical because Coffs Harbour is right near a town called Mullumbimby. And Mullumbimby has the most incredible weed I've ever smoked. It's right up there with, in Canada, there's a couple of places. So it's called Mullumbimby Madness. And I just was like forever changed by that. I was like, wow, that's incredible. I can't do a show. I can't do anything. And so Wayne was there in Denver, and he says to me, I'm having these weird feelings in I can't breathe, I can't catch my breath during my show. Wayne does the most physical show. He is a mime's mime. He's technically, from going to the crew, he could just do, technically he would do these things with Nanny that in the class that I just was like, this is, it was like modern dance. It was just amazing. He was so beautiful at the form of the true form of corporeal mime. And so DeCrew himself was 90 years old and suffering from glaucoma. But DeCrew was still teaching. It was like having a blind Yoda come up and try and, correct your, and he had a staff, and he'd come in and this was in the basement of his little studio, and he had the glaucoma, so he'd have to come up to you really close. He'd have to get like right in your face. And this little old weird man who couldn't speak English. So Wayne and Nanny were the assistant teachers, along with Steve and Corinne. These other two, one American and one, she was like Irish. And this is back in '84. Anyway, he'd lose his mind if you moved, because they would say, "Arrête!" And you just had to hold the pose. wherever you were, it didn't matter. It was like, you know, some childhood game where you'd freeze and he would come up and he'd look at you with this white weird eye. And if you moved, he would lose his mind. He would just lose his mind. Great memories of Paris. But Wayne and Nanny, they survived that time, and I went off to do Cirque, and I gotta keep track of where I am here. Sorry. Oh, by the way, before I got to Cirque, I was gonna meet Wayne in Edmonton. So my last festival was in Edmonton, Canada. Edmonton is a great city in Alberta, and they have a great fringe festival as well. And I was up there at this festival, all outdoor. In street theater, we call it a pitch, the spot that's given to you to perform at. So it's a pitch, and that's. And when you go out to do your show, you're on pitch 1, pitch 2, whatever. And I had a couple of other good friends of mine from Australia who were there at the festival. My friend Andrew Elliott, a sword swallowing magician, was there, one of my good buddies. And Wayne was out there somewhere doing a show, and Andrew and I were hanging out. And suddenly the ambulance comes rolling in with the lights spinning, and the sirens go off. It pulls in down there. Andrew and I are like, wonder what's going on. You know, maybe some little person had a heart attack. I don't know. And then suddenly we hear on the walkie-talkie, it's Wayne. Wayne in his show, he's one of the most physically demanding clown. He played a mad professor with his hair out, and he would get a guy out from the audience, and he'd have the volunteer from the crowd imitate and show, and he would show him the way he's going to do these characters and force him to get crazy, and he at one point imitates having a heart attack in his show. So he's in the middle of his show, and he's showing the volunteer, and then in the middle of doing this, because the volunteer is about to do it next, he has a real heart attack. And he falls down on the ground. And nobody is doing a thing. Because they all think it's part of the show. And that there's only one improviser who's part of the festival, who's come over to watch. My friend Patty Stiles is sitting there. And Wayne is truly on the ground just going, like he's having a real heart attack. And she goes, this doesn't look right. And she runs over to the info booth and says to the festival director who's standing there, does Wayne do this during his show? And they're all like, no. And by that time it was too late. He had massive cardiac arrest, and he dies. In the middle of his show, faking a heart attack. And all I'm thinking in all my years of touring with Wayne is he is sitting on the other side going, I'm dead, and they think he's had a wacky sense of humor where I'm sure he thought something along those lines. But by the time the ambulance got there, I just sprinted over. Nobody wanted to get close to his body as the EMTs were still trying to resuscitate him. And I tried to get as close as I could. I was like, oh my God, when you're in prayer, I don't know, it's different. There are different levels, I guess, of like when you, I'm gonna go up to 11 on prayer. And suddenly I was I'm on my knees, I'm focused in tension, everything is just dude, you do not die. You know, they're still trying to resuscitate. I'm waiting for them to go and just bring him back, and he's back up, and but no. And I heard that, and oddly enough, when I was there in prayer, in this little weird bubble of no sound, it was so intense because his body was like right here. And I heard this little voice, clear as a bell, just go, "I'm not coming back." Sure, it didn't sound like my own brain. I was like, "What? I'm not coming back." And that was it. I knew he was gone. And death triggers people in different ways. You know, the whole festival, all 20 or 30 other performers, everybody got triggered, and you know, everybody had their, because Wayne was directing the late night show. He was the director of the late night show called Late Night Madness. We were like, well, what are we, you know, we had to have those emergency meetings, and but there's, at the time that he died, you know, we each have our box of gear, of the stuff that goes in the box that you do your show with. And my friend Dick, who's the festival director, says, "Lee, you knew Wayne very well, so why don't you get the key to his hotel room, because we're going to need his passport. We're going to need some clothing to put on him that makes him look okay for when and it takes 2 months to get the body back to Australia. 2 months in a container on a ship and blah blah blah, and then all of the signatures that are needed from the other side, from the family, the FedEx, the passport, and all this other stuff. And I'm tasked with going into the hotel room and getting everything and putting it all away, because I've toured with him, because we've smoked a few Mullumbimby Madnesses together. So it is the weirdest thing when you are like taking the key card and like, and then you're open, and you walk in, and you're like, the dead guy's room. And I love Wayne. It was so heartbreaking. There's the toothbrush, that's this, the little notes, the money from the past few days. It's all so lived in. That's what it was. It was so lived in. And now he's gone. And I just sat there for a minute. I had his box. This is the same box I toured with him in New Zealand with. He's had this box for years. And I sit there and I slowly take my time and I put it all away. And I find the clothing that's going to go on his body to go back to Nanny. Luckily, my friend Chris, another performer from Australia, made the first phone call to let Nanny know that her husband will never be returning and the boys will never have their father. I was, like a day later, I called Nanny, because I knew her very well in Melbourne, and it's like nothing there. Talking to her was so, you could feel the numb loss of all orientation to who am I, why am I here, and I have these two boys. And all I could say is, you know, he passed doing what he loved, and I got it all put together, and it's going back with him. And the festival commemorated him, and we celebrated him with the Midnight Madness show. And then I had to move to Montreal, because we were going to Australia with Salt and Bongo. We were going back to where I once lived. I used to live in St. Kilda, Melbourne, Australia. I started in Brisbane at the World's Fair. That's where Wayne and Nanny were performing at the time, 1988. Australia in Queensland was having this breakthrough festival. And I arrived in Australia, and it was like, I'm never coming back. It was such a magical country. Who's been to Australia? All right, got a few folks, you know. It's a great place. It's not Crocodile Dundee, that's for sure. So So there I was back. So Cirque du Soleil, when you finally get on tour, you're in this fish tank with the same 120 people. There's the 5 Chinese, the wire walker, there's the duo trapeze, there's the solo trapeze, there's the annoying Russian family with the little kid who's the star of every Cirque du Soleil show has a little kid in it, who is like the star of the show, kind of. And so I'm the clown in this show, and you find out fairly quickly that it's a job. It's a job, and you're doing this job. And granted, they all fly in for the opening. Australia is the first time any Cirque show. It's bigger than Cats, and that's, you know, for Australia. We're going to Perth, we're going to Brisbane, we're going to Adelaide. We're doing all the major cities, and we're kicking it off. And opening night in Sydney is phenomenal. It's like, oh, Kate Blanchett, she's in the 5th row. Oh, there's Hugo Weaving, the Mr. Smith, the agent from The Matrix. Mr. Smith is like right there with his kids. Jeffrey Rush. And opening night in Sydney, they throw this $200,000 opening night party after the show at this place with the outdoor pool, and it's in all the newspapers, and I'm like, yes, indeed. I'm feeling good. Australia is mine. And we're going, it's 2 months per city. You're in the city for 2 months, and then you have a week break in between to the next city. And that's like your little mini vacation. So there we are in Australia, and we've opened the show. It's setting records. It's 3,000 people a night, and they put the whole thing up. I have to cheat here for a second. So it ends up that the box office manager is this tall German guy. He's like 6'6". I'm not kidding. This guy was the skinniest, tallest guy named Fritz. And completely German, and he ran it iron tight, but the guy was gay and he loved to party. So every city we would go to, Fritz would walk into the artistic tent where the training happens before the show, where you practice, and your makeup stand, you have this little stand that goes with you everywhere. It's your little cubby hole for your makeup and stuff. And Fritz would come in and he'd go, Olivia Newton-John, 5th row. Tonight, he loved naming the celebrities who had shown up, whoever was in the audience for that night. Kylie Minogue is here tonight. Kylie, not Danny, she's nobody. That's a sister. Anyway, so, and he would get us, he would give us free passes. He would get us into these clubs that you could never get into. He would just be like, wear your jacket. Wear your Cirque jacket, and we'll go to, whatever the name of the place was. We had the first openly gay couple on tour. Salt and Bago had the first gay couple that was, one was a performer named Michael, and his partner, Adam, was part of box office. And it was fantastic because I would just roll with the whole group of the house troupe. It's like 50 people are in the chorus, the 45, 50 people. You can look at the back there, you'll be like, wow, there's a lot of people. It's a whole little village when you're on tour. And you find out very quickly, because Russians, they don't mess around. They tell you very quickly if they don't like you. Andre would come up to me and go, you're the clown, I don't like you. I had another guy, there was a little skinny, his name was Igor. This Russian guy, the whole show, he puts a chair here, he's like a prop guy. He just does this, that, and then he does one backflip. Flies up, flips, lands, that's it. They're on tour with their families, by the way. They have a school with 15 or 20 kids, because all the Russians bring their kids, and every time we check into a hotel, they turn the spa into like Moscow Spa. I don't know what to call it. All the wives, they're there with their nails. They're waiting because the husband is training, and the wives have the kids, and they can't go into the artistic. They're not part of the show, but they're on tour, and so they would love to. They would bring their own rocks for the sauna. They had because you can carry anything when you're on Cirque. You're like, just put it in the truck with the rest of the gear. They had a box with rocks, and you get to the hotel, they go into the sauna, and we put our own rock. Because we want Russian sauna. And then they would pour the freaking water, and they would take a towel. I am not kidding, this is like I was held hostage by Russians in a sauna. You're like, stupid clown, come here, we'll show you real Russian sauna. And they clogged the little air gap between the bottom of the, and I was like, you know, and then they pour the water. Lee, you're real, doing good, yeah. The band, they play the same 11 songs every night, 6 nights a week. That's what life for the band, these are accomplished jazz musicians. And they play the same 11 songs. And then on the one day off, which is our Monday, after double shows on Saturday and Sunday, what does the band want to do? They want to smoke weed, right? And because I have already lived in Australia for several years, every city we go to, I just need to make a call and hear some Mullumbimby madness. And it ends up that the band is just thrilled when they find out that Lee can bring them some weed for the Monday. And it's very quiet. It's just me and the band leader, Mark, who's a very cool Montrealer. He's from the old town. He's just like, yeah, Lee, thank you, very good. We appreciate it very much. Okay. We're gonna go play some jazz. So and I'm not talking like, you know, it was like a Cheech and Chong bag. And the band would just, every city we'd go to, they would just be like, Lee, can we get some help for Monday? And that was it. I was like, and I'm not kidding, these are all, so one, I don't know how this happens, but at 1 in the morning, I get a knock on my door. I open the door 1 in the morning, it's Igor. And he's looking at me like, Lee, I am stressed. Can you give me some weed? I'm like, how did you even find out I have any weed? You're the Russian I never talked to. And he found out from somebody, I don't know, one of the band guys, but I had to give Igor some weed. It's okay. So anyway, I know that, believe me, we're going somewhere with this. It ends up that the one day off is your Monday. That's what's technically termed your weekend when you're on this tour. And so you finish your Sunday show, and if you're lucky, you get to book a hotel or book a getaway on the Sunday night, get in a rental car or get on a bus or whatever it is. So everybody who had paired, that's what happens when you're on tour, you pair up. There was a little dude, a little French-Canadian guy named, they nicknamed him Geppetto, because all he did was fix little things that were on stage, the thing that has the smoke, or it glows, or it's a light that has to light up when you're out there on stage doing a thing. He could fix anything. He was a little engineer. He ended up with one of the trapeze artists. It's just, everybody pairs up. And I was determined to, I was just like, no, I'm happy to just be, because John Gilkey had said to me, the star of Kidam, another show, anybody see Kidam? Great show. Kidam, one of my favorite shows. I was like, I saw John, he's an old juggler friend, he was like, ushers. What? Yeah, ushers.
Oh.
It ends up, because of the boredom. The boredom sets in within 2 or 3 cities. You're just like, oh, we're at 150 shows. And every city we go to, we hire ushers who are so happy because they're like, we're gonna get to see Cirque du Soleil every night. Oh my God. So, oddly enough, I realized because I'm the only other one wearing a microphone. It's the singer, Sheena, beautiful woman, beautiful British woman, amazing voice, and me. I have a mic set because I only do sound effects to invisible objects I hand to the people who are volunteers, and suddenly the audience understands it's an operating system. It's like, oh, it's a, all the sounds that go with whatever I'm doing in the gunfight, or I give them a boomerang. And so it ends up that I have about 15 minutes for the mic sound check where I get to see all the ushers. And usually out of the 30 ushers and my own boredom, there's 1 or 2 that are very pretty. So every city I would just wait to see if I could meet an usher. They finish cleaning the seats, the popcorn, we're all exiting at the same time out of the chapiteau, and I get to chatting to the ushers, and who knows, maybe there'll be some love or romance that will happen in this city. But nonetheless, it was a very boring tour once you settle into the fact that the show must go on. And I finally got to Melbourne with the show, and there was Nanny, Wayne's wife, with the 2-year-old and the 4-year-old. I got to meet the boys, and I got to see Nanny after all this time. And she told me that the memorial was heartbreaking, and that his body finally had come back. I had missed the celebration of Wayne's life with about 30 to 50 other performers that I knew from my 5 years living in Australia. And there was Dom, and there was Andrew Elliott, and there was my friend Chris, and they were all there, and she said, we gave him a standing ovation at the end of the celebration memorial. We literally stood up with the body in the casket, and they gave him a standing ovation. And the little boys weren't really sure what was going on. There's Daddy, but he's gone. And I asked Nanny, I said, well, what happened? Have you even opened the box or looked, his prop box, their prop box? And she said, no, it's in our studio, and I haven't looked in it since you packed it up. It had been 8 months, probably. And she said, oh, but there's a video, and I don't have it. Or it was somewhere else. Somehow she didn't have the copy right then and there. But I said, okay. I kept going with the tour. And basically, we went through Brisbane, we went to Perth, and Fritz said, oh, we could go to this club. And I met this lovely woman named Rachel, who was not an usher. And Rachel was stunning and funny, and I said, I'm gonna fly you to Adelaide, because I'm Cirque du Soleil guy. And I bring Rachel down to Adelaide, and I've decided for the weekend, the Cirque weekend, Sunday night, Monday, all of Monday, I'm gonna get us a bed and breakfast down on the coast where the wineries are, and we're gonna have a very romantic time. And Rachel flies in, and I look up this is like, these are the days of Windows 95. There's AOL dial-up. Windows 98 was Windows, because we're this year, the year we're on tour is 1999, Yeah, so I open up this booklet, and there's an Airbnb. It looks nice. I'm calling that one. I ring through to this Airbnb on a regular phone with a calling card. The woman picks up and she goes, "Oh, the highway, you know," and I said, "This is going to sound really strange, but I want to get a room, but for a little cabin, but for Sunday night and Monday night into Tuesday. We'll leave on Tuesday." The woman instantly says, "Is this Lee Ross?" I said, "Yeah, it is. I mean, I have my American accent, but I'm like, this is do-do-do-do-do-do-do." And she goes, "It's Wayne's sister, Cheryl."
Oh, wow.
I have the video of the memorial. And out of the blue, magically, the universe has lined things up for me to actually watch the video of the standing ovation and the 3-hour memorial at this bed and breakfast. Somehow I have dialed directly to Wayne's sister. I have no idea how that happened, but she knew I was on tour with Cirque for Manny. So Rachel and I go down to this bed and breakfast, and she gives me the video, and Rachel is like, "You're not gonna go down to the beach with me?" I'm gonna spend 3 hours in the darkness here. And I spent 3 hours having closure, watching each commemorative moment and celebrating, and the 2 little boys, and I get to actually kind of be there and watch them all get up, and there I am at the end of the video, getting up and also giving a standing ovation to my lovely friend Wayne, who had passed on the pitch. And again, the thing of knowing, that whole knowing thing in it, I felt such closure after I saw that video. And the tour was leaving Australia, and we were going on to Hong Kong, Japan, and Asia in general, and Singapore. And we got to Singapore, and I was sitting in the back of the artistic tent, and I was sitting there one afternoon while everybody's training, and I just hear this voice, just like when Wayne had passed. It was different, but I heard this separate voice go, "This is your last show." And I'm like, "Really?" And "Yes, this is it. We're leaving. We're done." And I really felt relief. There was this relief of knowing that on some level, some part of me had decided it's over. We had done easily, over 500 shows already. And I would finish out my contract in Hong Kong, because Hong Kong was being handed over to the Chinese. And it was that 1990-2000 handover period. And they had flown in all the big wigs for opening night in Hong Kong. But it was something to kind of know that I was leaving, and these would be the last few shows. Would I have good volunteers? Would I be able to just escape this fishbowl? And the final opening night in Hong Kong with Guy Laliberté, the billionaire owner, and all of the other major players in the organization there to shake hands with the Chinese. In the front row in Hong Kong is this actress named Maggie Q. And she's been in a lot of big movies since then, but I picked her, and she did the gunfight with the other 2 people, and it was just, it was just one of these magical, timeless, nothing could go wrong. They were all so good. The volunteers were so good. I didn't have to really instruct. They just were ready to improvise. And I left the tour, and I left it all behind. It took me 6 months to unpack it all. And then I was back to being a street performer again. And nothing felt better than to just be like my little box of tricks, no big sound checks, and da-da-da-da. And I just had, and there I was, invited to go back to Edmonton, Alberta, Canada for Busker Fest 2004. And there I am, back in Edmonton. And the new director, Shelley, my friend Shelley, she says, Lee, we're going to put you on Wayne's spot where he passed. And you're going to do a show on his spot. And I get my box and I drag the gear out there. And I'm looking at the crowd already starting to form. And I look at this crowd, and as we finally do some verbal following and get some jokes and get some stuff going, I look at them and I say, look, I want you all to know, I don't know you, but my friend Wayne died right here on this grass, in this space, from a heart attack many years ago now. But I want us all to give him a standing ovation, even though they're already standing because it's street theater. And we did. We gave Wayne this standing ovation, and I felt very complete in returning there. And I thank you all for coming out tonight. I want to say a big thanks to everybody from Cafe P, Steve, John at the bar, and Tim. Thank you, Tim. And let's give a big hand for Meredith for